People love it. Welcome back to the Lozcast. It's good to have you guys. We are talking Manchester United, Man City, chess.
The big three.
The big three, yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's one team missing, but yeah. It's been an interesting week. In fact, it's always been an interesting week for us. We've got a lot to talk about. Jamie came in bubbling with ideas.
Yeah, well, I think last night sparked all sorts.
Yeah, right. So we should definitely just talk about Manchester United. I think Manchester United, and this is an indication of how bad things are the team that are easiest to theorize about why they're bad.
They give you so many possible avenues in.
I'm like, I actually came up with a theory last night that a lot of the bad theories or a lot of the bad football are actually cover-up theories for the actual theory of what is actually happening. So I kind of want to differentiate between the two and work out what's cover-up and what's actually a real bad thing that's happening at the club.
Okay, I love this. And to start, for the context,
yeah,
they draw the game 3-3.
Against Galatasaray, away from home, whilst just probably as a fan base and in general, just completely underestimating Galatasaray in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, Galatasaray have some decent players.
They have great players.
They have Ziyech.
Do you see Icardi's finish when he was ruled offside? Oh. Ziyech's good.
Wilf Zaha's dangerous.
Wilf Zaha's dangerous, but you kind of see why he didn't get picked up by someone else, if that makes... I mean, I know he went there for his own reasons. He made his own choice. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. Some of the finishing, though, from him, I was like, if you could have whipped that, you're due for a January transfer move, bro.
You'd be Aston Villa.
That's actually that's a perceptive transfer on Aston Villa's behalf if they do it.
Yeah, it's like Bailly needs a rest twice a week. That's so harsh. Zaha's a totally good player. But the point is...
No one's saying he's bad.
But he's lacks the X factor in the final third.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like, I do know what it is. It's that I saw him like do a really slow step over and go around a player, and I was like, cool, you can still sell it. But the finish was just at Onana. And that seems to be what troubles Onana the most. So it must have been really slow.
The other thing about Zaha is like, there's a category of footballer who, and Grealish was like this for 6 months at City at the start, who when they're at Palace or at Villa, they've got freedom to lose the ball.
Yeah, right.
So it's easier to look good when you can take risks. But then obviously at the top club, you have to be really good and not lose the ball ever.
That's where I feel like Manchester United have a real issue. Like and this is kind of the first cover up, or actually it's like midway between a cover up and a real problem, is that I don't want to call it malaise, but like the image and the bravado of being a Manchester United player, I feel is bigger than the actuality of being a Manchester United player. Other teams, I went to see Man City the other night, we'll talk about that later, seem very comfortable in their skin. City, Arsenal, Liverpool. There's not many players in any of those sides where I go, when I look at you in that kit, it doesn't look right. Or when I look at you playing, it doesn't look like it's not clicking. I can see all of them being like, at Liverpool for the next 2-3 seasons if I wanted to. And the same at City, and the same with Arsenal, and the same probably with even like Spurs, even though Spurs have lost 3 games.
It's interesting with you now you say it, with United, it feels like the shirt comes first, the player comes second.
Which is fine. Like, I totally understand that.
But it's also like, you look at that team and you think, this is going to be the biggest gig you ever get.
Right.
Like, you don't look like, of course, you're a natural Man United player. You look like someone like Fred, who was a decent player, but it didn't quite ever work.
Or Harry Maguire. Or I actually think Scott McTominay looked quite at home. Did you?
Scott McTominay is a special case, I think.
Yeah, because really, he's kind of the player that actually Manchester United should have aimed to keep as sort of like one of the gang from the old days, and he represents the goal.
Yeah, and also they've always had him as well. They've always had a Darren Fletcher, a John O'Shea, a Wes Brown.
Did you listen to the commentary, by the way?
Yeah.
Do you think it... I mean, I get it. Like, Rio Ferdinand and Robbie Savage are obviously openly just supporting Manchester United during the commentary. But like, when Manchester United were almost scoring, it was like, oh! And I was like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't good listening experience. There's one point where Robbie Savage went... Diogo Dalot. Oh. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, do some commentary. It's just weird.
Do you remember the Martin Tyler one? When it's Liverpool United, and United score a tap and it's like,
unbelievable, the roof comes off. And then he goes down the other end and it's like, Salah, goal. That's why I think Martin Tyler ultimately is no longer at Sky. I think a lot of people, he became a bit of a meme, and I feel like Sky like feels subject to that kind of pressure now.
I feel like they've done so well getting Peter Drury in.
Some people are actually railing against. I love Drury personally, but some people are railing against him for using. I think they said he uses his vernacular is quite flamboyant.
But that
Which also seems like quite a vernacularly flamboyant way to describe it. But you get what I mean.
You pretentious verbose.
Yeah. I think he actually said the word verbose, and someone got annoyed. And it was like, how is football verbose?
Yeah, but Peter Drury is so poetic.
He's brilliant. And someone's like, oh, he's trying to do Chaucer after the goal goes in. I'm like, at least he's excited. At least like, I feel like he's trying to make the moment for me. I don't want to feel like a commentator's like, oh, you're just lucky to be here.
Man City's boy is Chelsea's man.
But that's what I love.
4-4. Could you ask for any more? It's beautiful.
Sometimes you're just like, yeah, like you've nailed that. Like there are people in basketball who have, and in American football who have very distinctive voices and are clearly like, they're part of the furniture. Drury, I felt the rest of the world was lucky to have Drury, and then we got him, and I was like, yes, that's what I want.
It was. I'm not joking about this. The thing that made me the most excited for this season.
No, totally.
There's also moments where like you would miss the significance if the commentator didn't like help you. So even when Ronaldo returned to United, that's the famous one.
Yeah.
Reeved in reds.
Yeah. And like even now I've got goosebumps when you think of just him. I can just think of little words that he says. Like I love when he says elation. I'm like, yeah, elation's a really great way to describe certain goals. Like, well done. It's not just Salah, brilliant finish. Do you know what I mean? And it is a brilliant finish.
But it speaks to the change of emotional state.
Right. Which is where I felt that Robbie Savage is very good at dampening any emotional state I'm in. So I could be having the best day, and if I see that the third colour commentator being Robbie Savage, ruined.
You've just sparked a thought here, which is someone used to joke about like, if De Bruyne is on 300 grand a week, if you had the money, could you just pay him to hang out with you for a week?
Yeah.
Like, is that the same with Peter Drury? Could you have him like, you walk into the office and it's like triumphant in his stature.
Beautifully clicked and the email is sent. That's fantastic.
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The other Drury you want to mention is when Barcelona beat Roma.
That was a really
and then
good
in the
one.
return leg, Roma win it in the last minute.
Yeah.
And it's Roma have risen from their ruins.
I feel like he's also had, like, I think Peter Drury had a very long audition globally, because I think what most people know now, but I didn't really ever think of, was commentators obviously commentate for other countries in English. And so they, like, and I feel like there's like, in my mind, there's one big commentary building where they all just go and go between rooms. It's like, oh, you're doing La Liga today? Yeah, I'll do La Liga. What are you doing? I've got Bundes. Okay. And
Werder Bremen again.
Yeah, and it's just like a bunch of feeds and stuff that just sort of come in. And some of them do commentate on feeds, but obviously some of them go to the ground, like it's good to be there. But I realized he was sort of auditioning for the role, because there was, and I feel like if Peter Drury's got an agent and that agent did anything to contribute to this, then congratulations, like you got a great agent. They were just constantly clipping him up. I feel like Liverpool fans definitely helped, because it was sort of like, it was a long time of people going, did you see this clip of Peter Drury? I think he might have done an alternate commentary on like Liverpool, Barcelona. And I just remember being like, oh, this is incredible.
I saw a
Anfield, you know what I mean?
I saw a commentator for the first time yesterday. Like half the screen on the reel was the game. Right. Half of him was like on him talking, and it was engaging.
Yeah, it is actually really engaging.
And that was the Drury thing.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's funny, as you grow up, certain commentary phrases stick with you. Like I always have away goal, Manchester United kind of in my head. Or the other one's Rooney couldn't quite grow enough.
I love sadly it's Andy Gray going, you beauty, for Steven Gerrard's Olympiacos goal, which, by the way, I watched a compilation of Steven Gerrard's Champions League goals. Was his second Champions League goal. Like, if you're going to score, I know now we talk about Jude Bellingham and he's great and stuff, and like Steven Gerrard's second Champions League goal was for Liverpool in that match. Anyway, let's not talk about Steven Gerrard, right? We talk about Liverpool later.
I'd have assumed that would have been his 15th goal in the Champions League.
Right. Yeah. By that point, for me, it was like feet under the table. In my mind, it's like we've been playing in it for years. I feel like actually we've been out of it for ages, or we just hadn't done very much in it. And that was what was frustrating. Anyway, back to Manchester United.
Good job, Jamie and Lawrence.
Good job. that went well.
We're going to be really tight here.
Yeah. So Manchester United, I feel like we need to talk about Onana because a lot of the blame went on him. Seems that any time that there's an issue in a game, at least 50% of that issue will be Onana. And I'm trying to work out, people are like, he's not a top class goalkeeper. I'm like, well, where do you sit on that? Like, is he? To me, he is. But is that because I'm just seeing him as a top class goalkeeper?
Onana is a top class goalkeeper making mistakes versus not being a top class goalkeeper.
It's weird though because we were talking about the other day about goalkeepers and how they need to concentrate for different periods of time. I feel like Onana has just enough engagement that he's always on. And there are other goalkeepers where it's literally like, I've not seen the ball in like half an hour. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, on that basis, he should be doing slightly better than he is.
Way better. Like, but 2 of the goals last night, one of them was a brilliant finish. Another one and the other one, both of them his fault, I think. And I mean like fault.
But he's a much better shot stopper than most goalkeepers. And if you look at the XG like saved, which is a little bit of a dodgy stat, but still, he's like second in the league on it, only behind Luton's keeper.
Wow.
And United get a lot less shots on, well, maybe not that many less shots on target. So I really like Onana. He strikes me as like, do you remember when De Gea first came in to United? He was younger than Onana is now. But he like was clearly a good goalkeeper.
Yeah.
It was just raw as anything.
Different time of goalkeeping though, because you were judged almost purely on being a good goalkeeper. Whereas now you're basically an outfield player who can wear gloves.
You know what's interesting is Ten Hag really likes the fact he's a character. And by character,
Seems like a great character.
You can usually read prick. Like he got like turfed out of the Cameroon squad for disagreeing with Samuel Eto'o about playing long. The manager said, play long. And he said, no.
I remember reading this story. Yeah. That's kind of like, I wouldn't like that if I was Samuel Eto'o. Also, it's Samuel Eto'o.
Which, by the way, why is he making the tactical decisions? He's not the manager.
Is he not?
No, he's like the head of the
Cameroon FA.
Lawrence, have you not done your revision? Yeah. Your West African football bureaucracy isn't...
I actually do. I've never been to Africa. I'd love to go and just watch a game of football in Africa. And I mean, like, also I think it's kind of weird. That's like saying I'd love to go and watch a game of football in America. But what I mean is like, I'd love to go do one in North Africa, West, like all these different regions of Africa. I feel like you'd see such different styles of football.
Especially because in the north of Africa, a lot of the like ultra culture is French.
Yeah.
So there's like this like Moroccan, Algerian, French thing.
Right.
But then when you go to like the Cameroon, that influence isn't there, even though they're French speaking.
Yeah, and then there's like a resentment, I guess, to certain aspects of that. So it's sort of like they have taken real time and pleasure in creating their own identity away from those terrible people who came hundreds of years. Well, not even that long ago now, but you get what I mean?
Yeah, and then you have this dynamic where like Egypt for ages won every African Cup of Nations, but never qualified for the World Cup.
Yeah.
So it's actually it's another pod, but African football is a fascinating dynamic.
So sorry, how does that contribute to the problems at Manchester United?
Right. So on Onana, it's actually a brilliant season for him to be messing up because I think they want a bit of a hiding to nothing this year. That's maybe me giving them a little bit too much leeway.
Is that not? Yeah, like that's given leeway after the fact that at the start of the season, I think we were like, Manchester United should be one of the nailed on for top 4 teams. They'd invested in the summer, and I still feel like a lot of those transfers haven't come to fruition. You know, I mean, Amrabat signed, and there was like a load of, not fanfare, but it was like a lot of geeky analysis around like how that'll change the midfield. I loved the Mason Mount transfer. I was like, this is a good, for me, that was one of the most solid transfers of the summer. I was like, yep, that totally works. And they've just gone against, like, none of that makes any sense. Højlund they brought in, I mean, good. I can't really undermine it. I think he's a good player, but it's not been like barnstorming. Do you know what I mean? If that was Nunez or Haaland coming in, because I'm not judging him by his standards, I'm judging him by Manchester United standards, it should be better than this overall. 130
mil on Mount and Højlund. And Højlund you assume will come good because he looks like he's got the right pieces.
I think he is coming good, but I just think it's like, it's not... the rest of the team isn't coming good enough for him.
Yeah, the weird thing about Mount, by the way, is they signed him they needed a midfielder who could control the game.
Yeah.
So Amrabat's awesome at breaking it up, but he's not like your foot on the ball, 90 minutes guy.
He's not going to be that guy that dictates the entirety of the play.
And they needed one.
Yeah.
And it's weird they spent the money on Mount, who now looks like a backup Ericsson in the short term.
Which is weird because you would have thought, I think this maybe is the indication of how the summer actually went. They should have cleared house better than they bought in. Because actually, a real issue, I think, at United is the culture. And the culture, they have a real culture problem. Part of it being, obviously, they're premium, so they can afford to pay players a huge amount of cash. But moving players on, so, you know, if you want to move Harry Maguire on, huge wages, he's not going to get those anywhere else. He's not going to get all these, he's not going to play in the Champions League. And the same with probably Jadon Sancho. Like, you know, I'm not saying Jadon Sancho should have been forced out or whatever, but clearly Ten Hag doesn't want him at the club. You have to back your manager. I don't think they have this summer. And I'm not sure they have overall, if I'm honest. Properly.
The thing is, you free up the wage bill if you do it. So it's like hugely helpful to get 2 players off.
And they wanted 3 out. Jadon Sancho, McTominay, Maguire.
Where Ten Hag loses sympathy for me is he came in saying we're going to play this way. And we bring in Malacia, we bring in Anthony, we bring in like the Ajax gang. We bring in Christian Eriksen, this is going to work, guys. Anthony. But then he kind of goes...
Martinez.
He goes, oh, we actually don't have the players for it. So we have to play on the counter. But it's like, hang on, you've spent a lot of cash.
This team don't need to play on the counter is what you're saying.
Yeah, or if they do, that's his fault for spending the money badly. Like do
you think he's the one? I wonder if he's the one pulling the strings in transfers.
Well, for Anthony, he must have been.
I mean, he must have asked for Anthony, and he must have asked for Martinez, and he must have asked for. I just wonder if he asked for, like, for some weird reason, there's this like blind spot in defensive midfield for them, where it's like, I would like this guy. We got Casemiro. Not quite what I was asking for. I would like this guy. We got you Amrabat. Again, if you are listening, I'm spelling it. You know, it's like,
yeah.
I feel. When I was watching it last night, it did feel like a lot of the counter-attacking football was coming through, so it was definitely improving. Like, they had the McTominay goal was a great counter-attacking goal. It was Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I think, down the wing, McTominay down the inside, and in many ways, when they finish with that front 5, that's like a shape that Erik Ten Hag teams attempt to make. That's great. But I don't understand why against Galatasaray you're playing that. Like, I don't quite understand the meta that you're going for there. Yeah. Because it doesn't give them any control in games, any of the control they should have.
Which Ten Hag is like famous for.
Is that because he doesn't have the players at the back, do you think? So he doesn't feel like he has 2 centre-backs where it's like, oh, I can play with this. Like if they'd have got Yuri and Timber and then say he hadn't been injured, could be a bit more like, right, hey, I've got one guy in that back line. I can sort of rely on playing the ball. He can be the A side alongside an aging B side Varane or
Harry Maguire or Lindelof.
Lindelof. I actually really like Lindelof. I think he's a good B side to whoever you want as your A side.
It's possible that if he had like a better ball playing centre back, so maybe someone alongside of Fitz Martinez or something, they play a little different. Mm-hmm. But I don't know because
Martinez and Timber. I actually kind of like that.
Yeah, it's very dynamic.
Go on.
I just feel like with Ten Hag though, he's known for a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. Comes into the football club, and kind of halfway through goes, not in like a Conte dramatic way, but in a slightly stroppy.
So how do you read that then?
I don't know. I think he was surprised at the level of the players. I think when he was at Ajax,
that's just such a shorthand for something. There's got to be something else going on there. You can't be surprised at the level of professional. There's not one player in that team where I think they're performing to their absolute maximum. That is a real issue, I think, with this team. But I'm not surprised by the level of any of them. There's moments of brilliance they all create.
But he came in wanting to play like quite distinct football. And then he had to give up on that, or felt like he had to. And I think that's his fault, by the way. I think he spent enough money and the base level of the squad was good enough to not have to give up on it.
Do you think it is his fault? Do you think you could
he spent a lot of cash on players, given quite a good baseline of the squad.
Is he, first of all, I get that, but is he the one negotiating the fees? Probably not. So it's like, go and get me him. Maybe a better director of football, which really worries me if they were to get someone, like if they were to get any of the previous Liverpool guys, I'd be like, oh, this is bad news.
But the question, I guess, is like, how is it that Newcastle get Isak for less money than United gets Holland?
Or any of the players.
Or like, how is Tonali 20 million quid less than Mason Mount?
Well, we now know, but...
Well, as it turns out, we now know.
Maybe Mason Mount should get a gambling addiction. Like... It's like that now stinks, but like the Mason Mount one stinks too. There's an issue there for me. I'm like, why I get it. Chelsea, and also weirdly, like, when you look at Chelsea and you see Conor Gallagher, I'm like, that's the Mason Mount role.
Yeah, and he's kind of doing it really well.
You're doing that well. What are you doing?
And you also offer looking backwards.
Mason Mount must look at that midfield now and go, Caicedo, Enzo, Mount, under Poch.
Also, he'd be perfect in there.
He'd be so good, either on the defensive side or the other side, because he's playing alongside a World Cup winner and someone who's basically the next, I don't know, like, Makelele, Kante, or whatever you want to facilitative player. And he's facilitative. So he would facilitate Enzo and Caicedo.
Yeah, and for all his sins, Mason Mount is brilliant at pressing the ball.
Yeah.
Which is what Poch wants to do.
Right.
No, I think he's a bit gutted about it, to be honest. But my thing on
about his wages, but yeah.
But then the summary on United for me is Onana is a problem at the moment, but I think he'll come good, and I think he is basically excellent. He's just
sticking with him is definitely the only way to go with him.
Yeah, because you're not going to get a better. Well,
De Gea's on the market.
Although, when you say De Gea and Aaron Ramsdale, neither of them are practical, I don't think, for lots of reasons. But you do ask the question, like in a vacuum, if you didn't have any of the three, and you have to spend some money on one of them, who would you spend the money on? And maybe you come to Onana, but
no. So sorry, the three names are Onana, De Gea,
Ramsdale. Yeah.
I think depends on the type of vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a Nigel Farage vacuum,
mm-hmm.
I think they go weirdly. Ramsdale feels like a Manchester United, like he'd look good in a Manchester United kit. Does that make sense?
He's also English, which is nice.
I think that's the Nigel Farage element.
Yeah,
of that
exactly.
Vacuum. De Gea is a nostalgic vacuum. Onana is, for me, still my choice. I know that sounds weird, but he is.
No, me too, by the way, which is the point about Onana.
He's the Me Too one.
Yeah.
You're right.
Then Ten Hag. He's the best manager they're going to get. And I think you're allowed to make mistakes as you come into a club that's a bit dysfunctional, and you're right about the recruitment not being totally his fault, blah, 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 blah. He's been imperfect.
Tactically, I think you're right. There have been a lot of weird mistakes. The underlying numbers are actually not that bad with Manchester United. And obviously, I think at the moment, at time of recording, they're the most formed team in the league.
How do you read stuff like that? Because I
read
really
it when
struggle.
you go back through their fixtures in that time.
No. I mean, how do you interpret stuff like that? Because I hear that and I go, God, that's a really hard circle to square with what I'm watching.
No. This circle is about to be squared. Okay. This might be the squarest I could make a circle.
Okay.
Let me just read you the previous results. Galatasaray 3-3 in the Champions League, leaving Manchester United rock bottom of their Champions League group behind Copenhagen in second, which maybe shows the quality of Copenhagen. They're on 5 points. But that's kind of the point is, they're on 5 points, bro. And I know that means that going down to their last match day, Manchester United could do something. The last match day is against Bayern Munich.
And by the way, it's now Harry Kane's Bayern Munich. Mm-hmm. And I wonder what his second goal is going to... I wonder whether it's his first or second goal is going to be the penalty. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Manchester United then won 3-0 against Everton. Plucky, brave Everton.
Cracking result.
Good result. Realistically, Everton is susceptible to that. It's a bit of a misleading one. And they're kind of the ideal team to play at the ideal time. Because it's sort of like, we can get up for this now. The reality of the situation hasn't changed. So the first goal popped their bubble. Manchester United won 1-0 at home against Luton. They then lost 4-3 to Copenhagen. I'm going back in time here. 4-3 to Copenhagen. 1-0 against Fulham away.
It was shocking.
Fulham was shocking.
Well, also United was shocking that day.
Yeah. Newcastle United won 3-0 in the Carabao Cup. Man City won 3-0 in the Premier League. They won 1-0 against Copenhagen at home. They won 2-1 against Sheffield United. They won 2-1 against Brentford. They lost 3-2 to Galatasaray. They lost 1-0 to Crystal Palace, which arguably is not that bad at that time. They won against Crystal Palace in the Carabao Cup. 1-1 against Burnley.
Sorry to interrupt. Their fixtures in the Premier League, City aside, have been golden. They've literally played the bottom half.
But they've also, and then they've also played, they started the season against Wolves. They won. Tottenham, they lost. Forest, they won. Arsenal, they lost. Brighton, they lost. They've not beaten a good team this season. They've not actually beaten a good side. Their
league position is probably inflated just by the fact that 6 of their last 7 fixtures have been against the bottom 10.
I'm actually trying to find a good team they've beaten here. I can't. So since the start of the Premier League season, I can't find a good team that Manchester United have beaten. They've beaten Wolves,
who was like
who are
robbed.
yeah,
were robbed on the day.
Oh, that's a good point. Actually, I forgot about that. Forest. I mean,
Forest were better than them
Forest
on the day.
The red card. They haven't beaten Bayern, Burnley, Crystal Palace. They lost to. They beat Brentford. Maybe
Brentford.
I'm not joking when I say this. Brentford might be the best team that Manchester United have beaten this season. And now tell me the second half of the season does not look tricky for Manchester United. I mean, maybe, you're building some form of confidence.
Here's a question. Would they want the Europa League or not? Like if you said to them...
No. But I think this season, to go from the Champions League to the Europa League during a time when you're meant to be on an upward trajectory is just no good to me.
Even if it's a route into the Champions League qualification next year?
Dude, when you say it's a route, the route is them winning the Europa League. Like, that's the route. It's not like you go, hey, like the top 5 out of this sort of get something. You win the Europa League and you're in the Champions League next season. That's not an easy route. It's almost easier to go, sack that off, go for the Premier League.
Oh, to be fair, it's top 5 this year, qualify for the Champions League.
Is it?
Yeah. Like, this has been so underspoken about. Like,
that's
probably
how?
Because next year there's the new...
Oh, the new table thing.
And it's
actually, I kind of like, that was something I wanted to talk about this week. We can talk about that in a minute, actually.
So I think the point is, like, it's likely, it's a coefficient thing,
Yeah.
but it's likely to be a top 5.
I like that. No, it could be a top 5. I feel like we'd be talking about it all the time because basically anyone who's in 5th we're in the Champions League.
Okay, so the fact that this hasn't been discussed more, you're making me doubt myself. But I think it's true anyway.
During the next break, Jamie's going to look it up and we will take a look because otherwise it might be another video where you need to apologize in one of your own videos on your own channel. The real issue for me, I think, and I think, again, it boils down to pretty much everyone's conclusion in the same videos. Institutionally, everyone comes from good institutions where they play relatively well. Mason Mount came from a Chelsea team who were playing pretty badly, but he was still one of the best players there. Højlund had a good infrastructure around him. Anthony obviously came from an infrastructure. Erik ten Hag came from infrastructure. It shows the club infrastructure at Manchester United is failing the on-field aspect. And I'm sure commercially they're fantastic. But the on-field infrastructure is failing Manchester United right now. And it's leading to results like this, where they basically go, oh, like, again, of course we're going to draw against Galatasaray. And it doesn't seem to have all that much of an impact on anyone. Like, that's a disaster that Manchester United are bottom of their group. I know they're bottom by 1 point, but they're bottom of their group going into the last match day where they need to win against Bayern Munich and hope that the other teams draw. So the other teams who are both going for second in the group, therefore one of them needs to win, both of them will be playing to win. Neither of them are going, last day, just, see what happens. And if either of them do win, Manchester United, the highest they can get would be Europa League.
I wonder if, you spoke about United, the United shirt weighing heavy. I wonder if just the fact that they're Man United, independent of what that actually represents on the pitch, means they go 3-1 up against Galatasaray and slightly chill out. Because if they were Ajax or if they were Aston Villa, I'm just going down a level or two, they're like not letting that go. It's a huge result for them.
Ajax famously let a few leads slip in recent seasons, but and under
Ten Hag,
particularly manager. But yeah, I get your point. I feel like maybe Ten Hag, we could maybe question Ten Hag's game management. And I know that's like such a broad term in football. It's like, okay, well, but if you're a counter-attacking team and you get up and then you're kind of inviting the opposition onto you to then counter it on them, it's a bit like, how good is that as a management system if maybe that mentally the players aren't
It's happened enough
invested.
times. It's happened enough times that you're allowed to a little bit question it.
And I'm not sure I could identify what is wrong about the game management. I'm sure there's someone with really great tactical analysis who would be like, look, they let teams get into this. I'm sure it's like the areas they inhabit. It very rarely felt like Wilf Zaha was challenged last night. Cardi's goal was like, you're a counter-attacking team?
One question I just also one addition here is Marcus Rashford, who I really, really like. I like how direct he is. I think he's brilliant. He's a good finisher. Looks so predictable when he plays for United out on that left.
It's a real problem.
He looks, and the thing is, it's Ten Hag's job to people like slightly stupidly say, Salah system player, which is rubbish, but he is benefited by the system. It's Ten Hag's. I can't
think of a player, by the way, that doesn't play in a system.
Exactly. But that aside, Ten Hag's job is to do the same. To support his best player, maybe most dangerous player, to not pick up the ball on the halfway line run into traffic and give it 5 years. Like,
and then go, oh.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating to watch because
right,
when he's scoring 32 goals and he's arriving at the back post and he's in the 6-yard box, you think, oh, let's do that.
By the way, because Ronaldo left in such a toxic way, I feel like we kind of like paved over all of that as a narrative and sort of went, oh yeah, he was being toxic. But it doesn't negate the toxicity of Manchester United as a culture or as an environment. And it seemed to be something that like everyone just sort of went, yeah, scans. Like it doesn't make any sense to me now. Like, but what I now look at Manchester United and Ronaldo as an analysis tool is Ronaldo's a force of nature when he it was a waning force of nature, it was still like a force of nature. And Manchester United kind of broke him. And they're breaking a lot of things right now where you're like, that's not good.
Good players go there, and for the last decade they've gone there, look rubbish, leave, and do really well elsewhere.
Can I also venture a final theory? Manchester United are kind of in a purgatory right now because they are obviously just been bought by Sir Jim Radcliffe, and Oasis or whatever his company's called. It's not called Oasis. It's called Neom. No, that's the city in Saudi Arabia or something. But it's called something like that.
You're flirting around. You're almost
Nexus?
there, I feel like.
Gnosis.
You're flirting around the edges of it. It's like the next thing you say is going to be right.
Nasal. It's something like that. And so he's come in. Nice are top of Liga. Nice, and I visited Nice very recently with Uber Eats Liga. And you legally have to say it that way. It's like you can see if he brought in some of those changes they've got at Nice, it would be good. Like it would be very beneficial to Manchester United to just structurally change some of what they do.
Does he feel like the football culture dude? Like he has experience in football clubs. He kind of gets how it works.
I don't know if it's him specifically, but I think it's the infrastructure that he brings with him that
his team
does that.
Yeah, I mean that is maybe the light at the end of the tunnel for United here.
I think so. I think it's that I think to an extent, Eric Ten Hag and the team know they're kind of in a bit of a hanging phase where it's like, yeah, whatever we do here, a lot of you are probably on your way out. Like, you know it, I know it. Thanks for that.
The CEO has just left and he's transitioning out.
Yeah.
The other thing for United that's possibly a positive is the young players are coming through, and they really are.
Oh, as in Manu,
Garnacho.
Mm-hmm. We haven't even spoken about Garnacho. We didn't even speak about Garnacho's overhead kick the other day on the podcast.
I feel like
is that the best overhead kick in the Premier League ever?
Yeah. Only because he had to...
If you didn't shin it?
I love that, like a decade on, that's still so controversial.
And also that loads of people will be upset that you shinned it.
The thing about it is if you like paused... I haven't seen this done, but if you paused Garnacho and Dalot at the point Dalot crossed it, and then drew where he makes contact with the ball, you'd be like, what the fuck?
I don't think Dalot could get the ball there. I think that's partly like...
I wouldn't get there with my hands.
What I really enjoyed, by the way, post-game was, obviously, I think Bruno Fernandes is incredibly emotional. Like, to a degree I've not really... Yeah. I know there are like emotional players and you want them in your team. He seems so susceptible to just getting carried away with an emotion. Like, post-game, he said something like, yeah, he's watched too much Ronaldo. And maybe it was like, there's going to be a United fan in the comments that's like, oh, you're just taking that out of context. Bruno Fernandes was pretty, I don't know, he just gets carried away too much for me. I'm like, stop, get help.
It's kind of, you take the good with the bad, because that same thing is part of the reason why I think he came in and was so good.
Still think the midfield's better without him, to be honest. Still think the midfield in the long run, you could sell him and get another player and be like, I
have this toxic trait at the moment of just thinking Olivier Giroud is the answer to everyone's problems. But like...
It's really not the answer. Definitely not in midfield.
But just hear me out. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just not really relevant here.
Sure.
But I'm thinking about Bruno Fernandes and the kind of player he is, and Mason Mount and the kind of player he is, and Garnacho and the kind of player he is.
Yeah.
And all these clubs, United and Chelsea particularly, have like a busload of, are they an advanced 8? Are they a 10? Are they 11s? But they're playing just behind the striker. And the challenge for the management is like, well, how do we get the best out of these very talented footballers?
Sure. And
Bruno Fernandes hasn't like answered that question for Ten Hag. He hasn't like found himself a role. He hasn't like taken games by the scruff of the neck, really.
There's been I think it was like a Fulham game last year where he did or something.
Yeah, and this year he scored a late winner against them, but had just spent most of the game on the floor and in the ref's ear. And
two favourite places.
yeah, probably they are. Also, I'm not sure he likes Ronaldo. Like, again, this is like out of context thing.
Yeah, I was trying to work that out.
Wasn't there a beef? And also, like, Fernandez played way better without him in the side.
He did, but he seemed to sort of like kiss the ring. But
do you see Ronaldo's? Sorry, this is now going off topic. Being sued, but for £1 billion.
For what?
Sponsoring Binance. Binance with a big crypto. I'm sure
they sponsored him
that way around. Thank you.
Yeah. Although he probably could have sponsored Binance. Yeah, not going well for Binance. This is not financial advice.
The pod's we've kept really nice and narrow here.
Yeah, we're really kept it narrow in a tight 35.
A tight 35.
Binance, I had some money in Binance for a little while. I'm pretty sure I got it out. I need to check that actually. But yeah, like he was pretty full on with that sponsorship. Like I didn't feel great about it.
Do you remember the Tom Brady? It was Tom Brady and
someone else.
Someone else who said the crypto was for the brave. The brave were rewarded.
Oh, that was Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Yeah, that was I felt let down by Matt Damon.
The South Park writing staff took that ad and made an episode from it.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It was really good. In the next section, we are going to talk about Man City. I took a little trip to Manchester, which I do on very rare occasions because Manchester doesn't like me and I don't like Manchester. I like Manchester, but Manchester doesn't like me. And then in part 3, we will be talking about chess, the world, and everything else. Part 2 of the podcast, we're going to be talking about Manchester City. We're not really going to be talking about Manchester City, but we are going to be talking about trips to other people's home grounds. I went to see Manchester United versus RB Leipzig the other day in the Champions League. Thank you very much to TNT Sports for taking me. I kept calling them TNT Sport, and I felt like it didn't go well.
That's not their name.
Well, it's TNT Sports.
Ugh, that's like maths.
Yeah, but I mean, it is, but also they do have multiple sports, and it's all through the Discovery app. Anyway, it wasn't sponsored like that. But we went up there with them. Manchester was cold, and in fact, like the Etihad is a stadium which feels like unprotected from all of that. Like it gets very cold. I know general stadiums get cold, but like it feels very exposed there. Like it feels very like it sort of floats just outside where you want to be. Like we could walk there, but it felt like far. It's kind of weird. Like I just have bad experiences whenever I go to Manchester.
I've been to the Etihad once, and it was the exact same experience. Freezing and also like slightly out. I don't know. It's a weird part of Manchester too, I think.
Yeah. But first of all, the Champions Club is incredible. Incredible's maybe a bit of a push, but I had 2 roast dinners. A dessert, 2 pies, quite a lot of Heineken. It's pretty good.
Jesus, I'm so jealous. This is how the other half live.
All for free as well.
This is how truly the other half live.
Thanks.
Did you enjoy the match?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed. So everyone was so confident. It was like, yeah, we'll just roll over Leipzig and move on. Whatever, mate. Who cares? And I was like, no, like Leipzig are good. Like I think I saw them last season when they had Timo Werner playing up front against Celtic in the Champions League. They were just very clinical, did all the right things, had really good shape, really organised. You know, if you need to play counter-attacking football, they can play that. If you need to be in control, they can play that. All the players know exactly where to go. They exploit the space perfect. Like it was like they knew where the space was against City, and they could perfectly pick at it. And they did it a couple of times, obviously, because it worked.
Yeah, I mean, the counter-attacking side who can keep the ball and hold their own is the perfect side to play City.
Yeah.
Spurs have obviously an amazing record against City.
Yeah.
Especially at Spurs' place.
So
similar sides in that kind of way.
Yeah, and actually like similar level of players as well, if you look at it. Like I could kind of see a lot of those RB Leipzig players coming across and playing. Like Xavi Simmons, fantastic player. Like watching him is awesome. He was really good fun to watch.
He has a buyback clause of €6 million for PSG.
So low. And I think that's the kind of thing you would activate and then just sell him on if you don't want him in the team. Although when they get rid of Mbappe or Mbappe gets rid of them, they should bring him back because he's fantastic. Yeah,
this was, I think Barcelona did this fairly recently. Although I forget who. They had a buyback clause with someone, gave him a haircut and then sold him on for an extra 10 million.
That seems to be the Barcelona way. But it was good. Like I felt the light show beforehand did a little much. They do like a little light, not a little light, it's a long light show with a voiceover and like it's not only the lights. There's like screens with videos on, and it's all about their history. It feels a little bit like the maiden doth protesteth too much sort of thing.
Well, I was gonna say, I bet at Anfield they don't need.
We don't have any screens.
One, there's no screens.
We have one screen. Well, we have like
a scoreboard.
LCD scoreboards, and it's like, now watch the scoreboard pre-kickoff. It's like, oh, and it does like a little Nintendo 64 type thing.
But the pong,
Nintendo, like
but the pre-match pong. But like at Anfield,
work.
you wouldn't need to. It feels like, because it's like, oh, we know what this is.
But I feel like at City, maybe they need that, not because, you know, they're bad fans. I think the core set of Manchester City fans probably are good fans, though a lot of them just complained a lot of the time, but they're still good fans. There were a lot of tourists.
They also don't like the Champions League. I know they won it, but the City fans.
No, that's the other thing. I was sitting there going, how ungratefully, like, this is a good, don't like it, don't compete.
You know something though, it's weird because I support Wimbledon, and I would be less fussed about the Premier League, the Champions League, than I would be the Premier League for the same reason they were.
Wow.
Which is that like you spend so long going up to Torquay and being beaten,
right?
But to be the champions of England is like such a like so tangible, whereas the European thing feels a bit abstract. And I understand when City fans articulate that.
Well, yeah, that kind of was similar to that. Took me down that route of. I think they're a scalp at the moment, City in Europe. Like beating City is like it's not. You know, Leipzig, I'm sure, could do relatively well in the Champions League. They probably should make it through to the next round, just based on being a decent side. City were like, it was like, oh, we could go away and do something. And I felt even when they were 3-2 down, because City obviously turned it on in the second half, scored a whole load of goals, and you know, it was a good comeback. I was like, oh, this is entertaining. It was good. But Leipzig were almost like, yeah, scans, cool, move on. It felt. I don't know, City almost looked unflappable. They were 2-0 down. It was just like, cool, get the ball, put it back out there. Jack Grealish does Jack Grealish things. And Doku came on, Doku. Everyone said it in different ways. He was really on. The only thing with Doku, sometimes he does a lot of stuff and everyone goes, ooh. He didn't have much end product. And I'm not saying, therefore, he's not a good player. But
his end product is better than it should be. If that makes sense.
It's as good as... In fact, I think it's a better output in terms of stats than Grealish has. But what I would say is Doku, although Grealish, I think maybe also has this, both of them have gravity. There's a thing in basketball called gravity, where it's like the pull that you have, which obviously creates more space on the floor for other players then to get a three off or whatever. Doku kind of has that, where it's like he pulls two players towards him, and then that just creates a whole load of space.
You basically can't defend him one-on-one, I think is the point.
Yeah, you need a small team of people, because if he goes past someone, you need the other centre-back to be switched onto it, or you need his DM to come back, or a really mobile 8, or a winger that's willing to help out.
Because, I mean, the thing he does where he drops his shoulder and cuts in, he's got two lower central. You can't stop him doing that. No. You just have to hope he's running into traffic. Mm-hmm. So I think you actually can't. He's one of those weird ones where, like, I don't think defending him one-on-one's an option at all.
Kind of reminded me of Mane. Not in a, like, literal one-for-one sense, but in a sense of I remember when Mane was very much like a gravity player as well, where more players would get pulled towards him, and then that creates space for Mane to go. But I'd always be like, oh, why are you passing back? But it was like, because you've created space that now is there to be exploited. Or he would just drop the shoulder and be by you in a second. And that's exactly how Doku feels, where it's like,
we said this on Monday, I think. The other thing about Doku is City got him like from the outside looking in, dirt cheap and basically unopposed.
Dirt.
So for his level of end product to be as good as it is, given his obvious like skills, one-on-one, pace, on the ball, pretty good going. Like
really good going, really good, like really watchable as well. Like someone who gets the crowd on their feet. I think you kind of want that. Grealish spent a lot of time on the floor. Not that I dislike him, but just didn't get me on my feet, is what I'd say. And the other thing I'd say is City need to work out a way to put pacey crosses on Haaland's head, because there were too many times where they'd float a ball in and he would almost need to generate the power himself. And I was just a bit like, oh, come on, bro.
Having been up to City in the week, who do you think their top two most sold shirts are? I read this week.
I don't know. I would say Grealish.
Yeah.
And maybe Rodri.
Rodri's interesting. It's Haaland number one.
See, Haaland was in my mind, but I was like, that's too obvious.
Too obvious, yeah.
So Grealish,
but
I'd say is one.
Grealish, I never would have got number 2.
Is he number 2?
He's number 2. Yeah,
I'm very perceptive.
I never ever would have got that.
I did.
But yeah, but it's also not if you remove Grealish. This is kind of the beauty of City and the beauty of Pep. Okay, so like Haaland, De Bruyne aside, not really obvious you can pick one out.
See, that's why I said Rodri.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he's like a Busquets. There's a video we're making at the moment where it basically goes, who's bigger? Who's like more needed by Pep, Rodri or Busquets?
I have a question. If you were a City fan, who would you get on the back of your shirt? And why is the answer John Stones?
Probably Bobby Firmino. Oh,
it's for
probably
me,
is John Stones.
Yeah,
actually. Yeah.
That's the correct answer, I think. Barnsley boy playing like peak Pirlo.
Surprised Foden wouldn't be more of like an option. My battery's about to fail. Anyway, I've covered that part. In the next part of the podcast, we will talk about Mo Salah playing chess, City something, and I'm going to pick up on a point that we made before, but I can't remember what it is on camera.
Perfect. Right. See you then.
Hot on the back of section 2 becomes section 3. None of that was English, but it doesn't really matter. The thing we were meant to talk about that I couldn't remember was I was telling you pre-pod I've been to Manchester, and I told you I told you something about Man City's little light show. They do like a light show before the game, and it's got the video screens at either end, and there's a spoken word piece. And and lasers. And the lasers like put words on the field. And in that moment, you're like, this is really good. Like, wow, like I'm genuinely engaged by this. But I remember like sort of being like, oh, come on. When they're like, and the boys step on the grass. And you're just like, give it a break. I felt, and in that moment, I was like, this doesn't feel like yours. This just feels like a thing you could do. Like, I know you could kind of drop little words. Like you could drop certain names in and change some rhymes, and it could be any club. You could literally just be like, drop in, swap that name out, put Dalglish in there, blah, 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 and you could just give this to Liverpool. Or, do you know what I mean?
Just like the frame of the boys on the grass.
Yeah.
The game kicks off.
Yeah. And as they won the cup in 66, or like they won the cup in 72. And that was when your dad remembered he loved football. And you're just like, and like someone's put time and effort into this, and like, yeah, it's really cool. And to coordinate lights and video is really cool. I'm not at a Drake concert. Like, I'm here to see a little bit of football. And I remember, do you know what's really weird? It's like throughout the night, people kept talking about the light show, not the football.
No.
And I was like, we're watching the treble winners from last year. And like, even the Champions Club where we were, which by the way was lovely, and I'm very grateful for going, and it was really nice, and thank you, Man City, for having me. They kept talking about the light show, and the guy was a lovely guy, but he kept going, now, like when he encouraged us to go out to the pitch, it was like, now go out there, the light show starts in a minute, and in like 4 minutes, and I was like, and the football will be starting in 10, like, you know? Like,
it's like when Camilla Cabello did the Champions League final with all the Liverpool fans. There was all this stuff on Twitter being like, I don't know, like Liverpool fan, like age 53, like coming straight from Tranmere, like watch it, like it's like, sorry, who is like? It's an interesting mix of like pop and like awesome, but
what's going on here? Why is this happening? Like
why is Bad Bunny here?
And why is she being booed? Like I don't know. It felt like one corporate entity booing another corporate entity. And I was just like, you know, when Nestle and Cadbury's fall out or something, I'm like, both of you make good chocolate.
That's like the continuously funniest joke on the internet, where it'll be like, oh, Sainsbury's like give homeless veterans something. And the comments like, respect from a Tesco's fan. Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorites. But like, we then got into the conversation of whose stadium is like the most of their stadium. Yeah,
so for example, like Liverpool, I was saying, Anfield and Liverpool feel almost inseparable.
Intrinsically linked.
Yeah, and if you were to lose Anfield, it feels like the club that came out would be radically different.
There's a symbiosis to it, and I feel like there's definitely a Malcolm Gladwell outliers kind of analysis of stadiums in here somewhere, where it's sort of like, they wouldn't be the same club if they weren't based there. Like, you can't just transpose that team's somewhere. You can't transplant them into another city and go, be Liverpool in Preston.
Yeah, and there's like a slightly wanky thing here around like, there's the Ship of Theseus. Ship of Theseus.
Right.
God, I can't remember the name. The idea is like there's a ship.
What, like the Minotaur guy?
No. Like
Who was that? Who was the one that killed the Minotaur? Anyway, go on.
I don't know.
Prometheus didn't kill
one of the Isses for sure.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Anyway, the premise is this boat goes out and one piece of the boat gets changed every year. And in 100 years, it's a totally new boat.
Like a different broom.
Yeah, exactly. And the question is it the same boat? If not, at what stage does it stop becoming the same boat?
Was Theseus that killed the Minotaur?
Was it Theseus?
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah. That was my Theseus, at least.
And in any case, the question we're basically asking is, are all football clubs the same kind of boat? Or are some football clubs more sensitive to a piece being removed and replaced than others?
So that was the worry when Liverpool changed the main stand. They made the main stand like twice the height. And it was like, ooh, the atmosphere is going to be different. Kept the sound in really well. Then we changed the away end. Well, if the copper singing and the other end sort of catches that, what then? But it turns out that clubs employ people who actually think about this stuff.
But the interesting thing is like West Ham United, for example, moved to the Olympic Stadium. I feel like a different club for me.
Because it is. Because when you go there now, I remember going to Upton Park and being like, what is this wasteland? What is this like version of the future that I don't ever want to return to? Because obviously that's what they want. They don't want a Liverpool fan to feel comfortable. And I was like walking through, going to go and collect my ticket, and fans were like, yeah, if I see a Liverpool fan, I'll kill him. And I was like, yeah.
Okay, but then the question is, and maybe this is just my fetish for Fever Pitch and Nick Hornby speaking, but Highbury and Arsenal feel like the same thing. And the Emirates, okay, they're a new version. The Ship of Theseus has evolved.
Yeah.
But I wonder if like Leicester felt this way when they moved from Filbert Street, or whether Derby felt this way from the baseball
So Derby
grounds.
definitely felt that way, because I went to the baseball ground and then I went to Pride Park, and it was like two different experiences. And I feel the same about West Ham should not be based just outside a shopping centre. Like the fact it doesn't threaten me to walk past a diptyque on my way to the stadium. Or someone being like, can I try this bar of soap on your hand? I'm like, no, I'm okay, thank you. That's the most threatening thing that happens on the way to see West Ham. Or someone tries to sell you like life insurance from a stall, or I don't know. Like I can buy something from the Lego store and 10 minutes later watch West Ham. That's not threatening to me.
Before the Sheffield United home game, because I live just around the corner from Stratford.
Yeah.
I went to...
Don't give them your exact address.
I think I'd be fine.
Right.
You might be less fine. I think I'd be fine.
Good point, yeah.
So I go to Westfield, Stratford to pick up a shirt.
Right.
And I'm stuck in the...
A West Ham shirt?
No. Shirt.
Right.
A clothing shirt.
Right. See what I mean? Shouldn't be able to do that.
But you shouldn't be able to have the confusion. Anyway, I got stuck in the queue with West Ham fans coming out the grounds. And I was a punter. I was a shopper.
Yeah.
I was going to weekday.
Yeah.
That's so oversized. It's a separate topic. I'm 6 foot.
Terrible fitting.
I'm 6'1". I wear a small there, and it's too big for me. I'm between an extra small and a small, and I'm 6'1". Anyway.
2024 is the year you eat. We get it.
Yes. The point being, what was the point? Yeah. Totally weird experience. My relationship with this, though, is I watched Wimbledon at Kings Meadow growing up. And Kings Meadow, Kingstonian played there. And it's like Kingstonian were Div 9. And then Div 8. And the ground, like the away end is through a parking lot. And I used to sell programs down there. And I'd literally go in through the parking lot. By the way, middle-class kids selling programs in the away end is the scariest experience. Because you sort of want to go there. Because you sort of, everyone expects you to sound £3 a program, so down there.
And you're there going, can you read?
No, I'm there going, good, so could I interest you in a... Anyway, we then moved to Plough Lane, the new Plough Lane, which for the club was a bit of a spiritual, like, full circle thing.
But also good name to move to. So you move from one working class pastime to another working class pastime. Like, Plough, doesn't, like when you go to the Olympic Stadium, it's like, there's something a bit corporate about that, or like whatever they call it.
But the problem is, even though Plough Lane isn't corporate really, and we, like at the old ground, after the game, we mingled with the players, and everyone was allowed into the President's Lounge, and the club was like one thing. And I snuck into the ground for a year because I had like a pass, a lanyard that said access all areas from 2 seasons ago selling programs. So that was my season ticket. And there was all of these little things that like I loved. And then now we've moved to Plough Lane. I don't go as much.
Right.
And it turned out it wasn't Wimbledon as much. It was the Wimbledon that lived at Kings Meadow.
No, and that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just take the culture and just take it somewhere else. Like it is all of the experience. It's like, why did I want to go and see the Lakers in LA? It's because you want to go to Staples Center, but it's actually great.
And all of this,
but you get my point. Like, I can go and like it looks the way it looks. It is where it is. You can't change that.
Also, the thing you said that was very perceptive around like, well, if the cup's here and the away end's there, like everything that with rivers, like they have super distinct boundaries because like, the path of least resistance is here, and give it 100 years, it's very obvious where it is. Same is true of football grounds. Like all the little quirks that no one has thought through. It's just, this is the structure. And then the quirks emerge. They become the experience. Yeah. Like I saw Paul Callenby, he plays centre half for us. He was on the bench half an hour before kickoff, trying to get some wine gums in the shop next to the court. Like, and then he didn't even let take him off to skip ahead in the queue.
Right.
That was only possible because you had Fat Boy's Cafe and the corner shop right by the grounds. Not true anymore. And now the experience is different.
Of course. Yeah. And like, and I guess that's the same for City, right? Like, and maybe, because City have been in this ground during this era, so it's not like they're half in, half out. Like they are, this is very much the ground of this City era. They're building memories there. In fact, Rodri got some rubbish the other day, and I was like, actually, I really respect what he said. He was like, Liverpool are one of the big, someone will say it's a misattributed quote, but they were like, Liverpool are one of the big three teams we're aspiring to be there, sort of thing. And it was like, yeah, we're doing what they did in the 60s right now. I mean, they're not.
Yeah, no, but the end of the 70s, early 80s, they are kind of doing what Liverpool did.
Yeah, but they're not.
But they're not winning European Cups at the same rate.
Yeah, but what I mean is more like, that nostalgia in the moment is very different to nostalgia years later.
Here's a question for you. Like, I saw someone say something quite sarky, but probably dead on about City.
Was it me?
It sort of fits the description.
Yeah.
Which
I would be in a lineup for that if you couldn't remember the person.
Yeah. Basically saying like with City, there's no emotion in the games because it feels, even when they beat Real Madrid in the semi-final of the Champions League, it felt more like an execution, an army execution rather than, there's no jeopardy.
Yeah.
They weren't even like in the games really, they were just pulling away.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think about the 99 treble in United, it was jeopardy against Spurs on the last day of the season at Old Trafford, 1-0 down. It was jeopardy in the FA Cup semi-final against Arsenal, saved penalty Schmeichel. Jeopardy in the European Cup final, 2 late goals. And with City, they were just like, we're better than you. We'll have 80% of the ball, and our big jeopardy will be Lukaku missing 2 chances to take it to extra time.
But also, we knew that we were better than you.
Exactly. The one thing that is quite cool about the City side is like the Rodri gets all the big goals. That's so football, I can't describe it.
Rodri is so key to City. I feel like one of the only ways that City really fall off this season is if they lose Rodri.
They can lose De Bruyne and be fine. They can't lose Rodri and be fine.
Right.
Which is a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, but also makes perfect sense.
Here's a question. This is a bit edgy. Let's say...
if we had Rodri, we win the league. Oh, good question. Go on. You were going to say something crazy?
No, I was going to say, if you said to De Bruyne, you're not allowed to... you have to track Rodri's movements. You are now a Rodri impersonator. Could De Bruyne, would he be able to do something vaguely as efficient? Such a different role.
Instinct. I feel like it's the instinct that Rodri probably has or has had honed. I feel like if you did it in a week, no. I feel like if you did it over 3 months, you probably could. And that speaks to the coaching. That's why I never get it. Where like someone made a really good point the other day. I think it was a YouTube video. I get suggested all these like... YouTube definitely knows I like long YouTube titles where it's like, if this person did this or this was this, if transfers and coaching were switched...
The Rodri paradox, : a brief thesis on positional interplay in a box midfield.
Where I live. So what I mean though is like, they found a way of saying to me, transfers, we wouldn't put the emphasis on them nearly as much if our coaching was good. And I was like, yeah, of course. Why would you not put 60 million into your coaching staff and just improve the players you have? I often think that I'm often like, I know they've just spent 100 million on Bellingham and Caicedo just went for 115 million or whatever. You're telling me that there's not one person in your squad that if you went, we're going to buy you a better house for 10 million and and we'll take care of your lifestyle and we'll pay you wages. Could you think you could do what Caicedo can do?
Yeah, but I mean, this is the interesting thing because there was in The Secret Footballer, which is Dave Kitson, everyone, spoilers.
Well, then don't.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. He said it was crazy because you'd sign a player for 2 million quid or 3 million quid. And then the thing that would make them play better is the fact you paid someone 50 quid to come in and engrave their name in the wood above their locker.
Yeah.
And the player liaison officer has now come in. But it's much cheaper. It's like in business. It's much cheaper to keep a client than get a new client. Yeah, you have the customer acquisition cost. It's much cheaper just to upsell a client than get a new one. Same thing applies. Better, it's much cheaper to make McTominay better than spend 50 million quid on someone who's a bit better than McTominay.
Yeah, but so your framing of it is it's cheaper. My framing of it, it's just better. It's more efficient. It's more like maybe McTominay doesn't have the ability, and maybe it is that it's like you have to have this thing happen to you when you're 5 and you will be good, right? But I still feel like that speaks to the part 1 that we were talking about, where
Victor Moses won a Premier League title at right back.
Right.
That's a mental statement.
And could have
6
won
months
another
before.
one later in a whole other position. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so you had Marcus Alonso, who was a Bolton and is a decent footballer, whatever. Him and what's his face, Victor Moses. Conte went, I'm going to teach you a role.
Right, Conte is a great example of it, and it speaks to what I'm talking about with Manchester United in part 1, where it's like, we know these players are good, like, Mason Mount's not uncoachable. Amrabat's not uncoachable. Casemiro has been through many different managers at Real Madrid, obviously not, like, quite a few different styles. The same with a lot of the players at United. It's like Højlund's still very young, he's incredibly impressionable. Anthony clearly has a lot of good roles, but like there's a lot of tricks in there. All these, you could name any player at United and be like, coachable.
I feel like so much of this is like, do you remember when Leicester won the league and they played like they had no injuries? They had no injuries. They had the same back four, same midfield, and they swapped Okazaki and Ewa. That was it. But they like stumbled upon a formula, like a recipe that just worked. And it's so, football clubs and good sides are like so temperamental. You take a player out, it might not work. Someone drops off on form, it might not work. Saliba drops out of the Arsenal side last year for injury, thing falls apart.
Didn't work.
So much of being a manager, I think, is seeing your players and kind of going, oh God, how do they work together in what system to make the recipe right?
And some players are about maximizing and some players are not. It's about like spreadability or that. So some players, it's kind of like similar to the way that different creatives think. At least it's an analogy. I'm not saying this is all footballers. Some people are very literal thinkers and they go from A to B. You could argue that would be, there are a couple of roles on the field where that is the case. Striker, centre back. Traditionally, it's more like stop, ball going, goal, ball going, goal.
Football in goal.
Yeah. A midfielder might be a more lateral thinker, or a winger might be a more lateral thinker. And what I mean by that is like, Cody Gakpo at Liverpool, it's like he's played all across our midfield and as a striker this season. That's a really appreciated attribute, but you wouldn't want all your players to be that adaptable. Like, I know Virgil van Dijk can head a ball in the net, but we don't then go, you're the striker.
This is such a weird comparison, but it's a conversation I had recently. There's a whole community that goes, it's important to take lots of acid and LSD, and it's great for your mental health and your spiritual awakenings.
Probably.
And then the caveat to that is you want enough stability. You want enough stability and enough like change. Mm-hmm. So you want like new neural networks to connect up together, but you don't want to like lose your sense of self. And it's about the balance between things that are secure and things that are loose. Mm-hmm. And football teams are the exact same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
You want the fact that Rodri's not going to move here,
right?
But you want Grealish to be able to pop in and go wide.
Risk management, and I guess like the space that you're creating in that, right? And that's where you need thinkers. Which brings me on to the final subject of the podcast. And this week it's been like a real viral clip, weirdly like geeky viral clip. Mo Salah admitted to playing chess.
No, I won't accept that. He triumphed. He celebrated.
He celebrated his love for chess or online chess.
Chess, the same thing, I guess. Online,
no, they're different. Also, if you can't look the other person in the eye, it's different.
Yeah, so chess is the second greatest game on earth. Football being the first.
Right. Okay.
And an uncontroversial statement. If there was one.
No, it's not.
Anyway, so Mo Salah.
Is chess a sport?
Probably not, but
yeah.
Emotionally I want to go, yeah, it is.
Right, yeah.
But probably not.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Salah says in this interview, yeah, like, I'm addicted to online chess. Like, I play a bit. And the interviewer says, like, oh, like, are you good? And he's like, well, I'm not good, but I'm okay. Which is everyone in chess, by the way. And he goes, oh, so, like, what are you? And he's like, I'm 1,400. And the interviewer goes, in the world? He goes, no. 1,400 rating points.
Right.
And that's, like, decent intermediate. That's, like...
How'd you get those rating points?
This actually harks back to a chat we had on the pod.
Right.
It's called ELO.
Yeah.
And it's a formula. Essentially, if you play someone your level and you win, you get some points and they lose the equivalent amount.
Right.
If you play someone way better than you and you lose, you only lose a little bit.
Love it.
And then you gain a little bit. Anyway, he's properly decent. He's like...
That you're now just blowing your own trumpet because actually what I remember you telling me.
No. Oh, God help us.
No, go on.
No, I appreciate your pause there. Anyway, he's properly decent. Caveat, not that good. He's at the level where, like, for him to get better, he'd probably have to read a book or, like, do a tutorial. But he said to the interviewer, my name on chess.com is Mo Salah with some numbers, and I'm around 1400. So then
Love that.
I went on chess.com and filtered for Mo Salah, all the variations with spaces and spaces, between 1100 and 1600. And I found 4 accounts
Love that.
that could be him. The next,
you friended them all?
No. So the next job is to rule out accounts that have played during Liverpool matches.
Love this.
Then, if there's anything left, rule out accounts that have played when I assume Liverpool train.
I think this is a video.
Do you think so?
In itself.
They're just trying to challenge Mo Salah to a game of chess.
Yeah. And I feel like we should make it together and then make it as like a collab on my channel. It'll get more numbers if we do it on my channel in the short term.
Do you reckon?
And then we just send people between them, but it would make like a really good video if we did this. I know some people in the comments are going to be like, actually, I don't know what people in the comments are going to say, but like, I feel like it's interesting. And I feel like what we could do is even start it as like a mini series, because you were telling me there's other players that play chess.
So The
right?
Athletic did a deep dive on Christian Pulisic's chess.
Right. So Christian Pulisic plays chess.
Tammy Abraham plays a little bit of chess. Kante plays chess. Trent plays good chess, as far as I remember.
I feel like there's a room we can get you in with one of these guys.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we could fly to Milan. I feel like we could fly to Milan and play Christian Pulisic chess.
I think he'd be up for it. You know, so I found his account on chess.com, which I'm embarrassed to admit, but I did. And it was all his friends were all like last name Pulisic.
Wow.
And he's better than me, Pulisic. But he plays a similar opening, or the same opening. And it was so funny.
What's the opening?
It's called the Vienna.
Okay, so how does that go?
King's pawn by 2 to open. The most common move is white. The response is King's pawn by 2. Second most common response.
Pretty much leading to like what do you call it? Like a stalemate or
It's called the center game. It's just
right.
E4,
Center
E5.
game. Sorry, my bad.
And then there's like a knight that everyone usually develops. It's the one that threatens the opposition pawn.
But you develop the opposite.
You develop the other knight.
That's so my move as well.
And that is actually quite Lawrence McKenna.
Yeah, that's so Lawrence McKenna. That's so contrarian.
And the game either goes into like a totally open, decent game of chess, but nothing spicy.
Or you shut it down.
Or there's a couple of lines, a couple
Right.
of like specific moves they can make that if they don't have like the prep for it, it can be super dangerous. On Monday night, I was playing someone who's way better than me in real life.
This is Monday night after we recorded the podcast.
Yeah.
And you were on a bus home realizing,
Yeah.
realizing that you were at a loose end for the evening, which is fine. Like it's Monday night. And you didn't want to watch Fulham Wolves. And so you went, I started a chess club in this pub. I'm going to go in it and see where it's at. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't been for 10 months. I started it last year.
You're like the creator of Fight Club going back to his Fight Club. That's cool.
It's way less sexy than that.
I don't feel like Fight Club's that sexy, but all right.
Anyways, I go in and there's this guy who's like 2,000 rated, which in English is like better than I could ever be if I went full-time chess coach. And we play this line, this Vienna, the one that Christian Pulisic plays, and he walks into a variation of it, and he just goes, he's like, good enough for chess, I would never see this. But without knowing why, he's like, this is spicy, this is dangerous.
Wow.
So he just very practically, like, having developed his bishop to a natural square, moves it right back to the home square. Just go, I'm not playing, whatever this is.
Wow.
We'll talk about what this is after. I want you to tell me. No.
Interesting.
And then proceeds to beat me up because he's like
really, really good.
He's forgotten more about chess today than I know.
I think there's a little series in this. I think there's at least like a video where it's like finding Mo Salah on chess.com or something. Like we could definitely do that.
You know the other interesting...
Also because Sky and all the other big people have got no interest in this. I'm sure someone has, and I'm sure someone at The Athletic has. But like, make a really good video.
You know what's a really good idea though? Because PogChamps is a thing on YouTube where they get creators and they pair them up with like grandmasters and international masters who coach them for like 2 weeks. And they play like terrible chess games against each other. But it's fun because they don't take it seriously, but also like the coaches, the grandmasters, are on stream commentating the games and being like, oh my God, they're going to do this and it's going to be a disaster. Like they can see how they think.
Wow.
So
that's
you could do a Premier League equivalent. Like in lockdown, they did the FIFA with Jota played Alexander Arnold, Jota of Wolves at the time in the final. You could have you could pair up international masters with Premier League footballers and have them play quick chess against each other online.
You're talking yourself out of a really good format here. I feel like it should be you that plays them.
I don't think I'm as
I feel
interesting.
like part of the fun is also like tempting them into the game, like finding a route to them. Like it's easy to go, do you want to play a Grandmaster? And then they're like, either they're like, oh, I'm up for the challenge, or they're like, no. Whereas like being like finding Mo Salah on chess.com and we played him. Like we could play all 4 of those Mo Salahs, right?
What if you did Anfield? How about this? Anfield, you get like right by the tunnel with a huge sign saying, Mo Salah, this is my chess.com name. Game ?
And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Jamie has a channel. Head over and take a look at it. We will be back again. We're going to try and be very consistent with this podcast because we want to build it into something very significant, and we hope that we can build a small community around it. We're going to start a channel for it very soon. But in the meantime, here it lives on the Lawrence McKenna channel and on the Lozcast podcast feed. Thanks, Jamie.
Cheers, guys.
See you again soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.